And welcome everybody to our chat and learn today. I'm Hunter. I am one of your hosts and moderators here at Power to Fly. I'm very grateful to be here with you. So welcome to our chat and learn. If this is your first one, just a little bit of housekeeping, or if you're coming back, just a little refresher here. We invite you to participate. Feel free to turn on your cameras, and this is being recorded, so it's possible you will show up in the recording. And this recording will be sent to you in the follow-up link within the next couple of days. And you can participate as well by asking questions. So you can go ahead and write in the chat, and that way our speaker and I can answer your questions live here. And if you would like to ask a question anonymously, you can send the question to me or Erica, who is Erica-Power to Fly chat and learn there, or our speaker if you like. And you can select any of our names. If you're selecting me, for instance, you'll select Hunter over in the chat, and then that'll send me a DM, and I'll happily ask a question anonymously on your behalf. Or if anything comes up for you, any concerns or questions, you can also reach out in that way for those things. If you do use the chat publicly, which I hope you do, please keep in mind this is a safe space, and be mindful to use language that is positive and reinforcing of ourselves and of each other here in this space so that we can all have a great hour. Okay, and you can follow us on all the things at Power to Fly and subscribe to the YouTube channel. So without further ado, we have SoftwareONE today here, and you can go check out the landing page here. That's what this is, the screenshot on the Power to Fly website, where you can see all of the resources and other job listings and other videos that have been provided there here at Power to Fly. So I highly encourage you to check out that on the jobs landing page. And without further ado, we have Diana Meyer with us today as the Chief of Staff for SoftwareONE. Diana directly reports to the president of the North American region, who is also an executive board member for the global company. She works closely with the regional leadership team, who are responsible for territories in Canada, the US, Costa Rica, and part of Mexico. Her focus is to guide leaders and their teams through transformative change while focusing on accelerating the growth and health of the business by providing cohesivity, strategy, transparency, collaboration, and communication. Diana, thank you so much for being here today. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's great to have you here. So before we jump into questions, is there anything you would like to let us know? Maybe something I missed about your bio, or any intentions for the next hour? How you doing today? Just let's get into it.
Well, since you asked, dangerous. I'm doing good, but in all fairness, I'm wearing like 4 layers of clothes because I'm in a new office in Milwaukee, and I'm originally from Florida, and my skin feels like I'm becoming a human raisin. So I'm figuring it out. I'm staying warm. Got something to drink, so I'm good. I'm very excited for this time with you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm excited to be here with you, and thank you for being here. Yeah. So friends, the way this is going to work over the next 55 minutes is I have a list of pre-submitted questions that a lot of y'all wrote in advance. So thank you for sending them. Just so you're aware, they have been put in a doc. They are now without the original sender, so they are now anonymous. I don't know who wrote these questions. So thank you in advance for submitting them. I really appreciate it. And if you have any more questions that come up, feel free to drop them in the chat. So we'll sort of pepper in between, bouncing in between the questions here for our speaker today and the ones that you have live. So let's see, sorry about that. So with psychological safety is what we'll be talking about today. And that's a big one. That is a very big topic. And how to foster authenticity through psychological safety. So if we had a great question to kick us off here. If you could really talk about, just to set the tone for us, what does psychological safety really mean? And how would you describe a psychologically safe work environment?
Great questions. Okay, so before I get started, can I ask you a question?
Yes, you may.
I know what psychological safety means within the
Mm,
workplace. It's, part of my job. What do you think it is?
Great question. And I'd love to open this up to the chat as well. So everyone feel free. I'm going to start firing it off, but I'm going to tap dance a little bit to give you a little time to
I see
write
what you did there.
Yeah,
Nice.
exactly. Thank you. To put in what you think in the chat for what psychological safety is. So I'd love to hear everyone's thoughts on that. For me, in the workplace. So for me, I feel very fortunate to work at Power to Fly. We talk about this a lot. I have been in toxic work environments where I did not feel psychologically safe, so I can speak to both. So for me, I would say in showing up in my authentic self, not having to explain how my personality shows up to people is a way that I feel psychologically safe. I feel a psychologically safe environment can be being supported by other people on my team, feeling connected with other people. Let's see. Oh, chat is blowing up. Suzanne says, feeling free to express your true thoughts and feelings. Maria says, feeling safe to be our authentic self at work. Psychological safety happens when employees feel they can share their thoughts and views without fear of repercussions or being judged. Psychological safety allows people to show up authentically, questions, ideas, and practices, where I can freely discuss my opinions to my peers about my topics, as long as it's within the professional boundary and a place where you feel you're able to be your true authentic self. So I'm hearing authenticity a lot show up as a theme here.
Yes.
You feel included, safe to
Love
learn
it.
and contribute. Yes, be yourself without fear of embarrassment. That's a really strong one.
Yeah. No, these are wonderful. So I'm going to just give you a little walk down memory lane here. This is the history of psychological safety. So psychological safety, the term was actually started by a woman at Harvard. Amy Edmondson is her name. And she actually has some great TED Talks if you ever want to check her out. She does a lot of consulting now. She did research on it, and she started her research in the medical field. For instance, if there were nurses who maybe went into a room and thought that a dosage was incorrect, did they feel comfortable to question that dosage, or would they not question that dosage and just lean into the fact that, oh, well, the doctor wrote it, so it must be right? Therein lying the risk on people's lives and health. And so that's how she's the person who coined it. Google is actually the place, the person, the group that coined it and made it completely catch fire out in the world as it is today. In 2012, Google started what they call Project Aristotle, and it was started by their HR department, which they call people operations. And their quest was to be able to define and determine the perfect formula to build the perfect team. So for 2 years, they were pressure testing, moving things around, trying different scenarios. And 2 things came out of it. They found out that it's not who you put in the team, it's how the team works together. And they found out that the key to how that team worked together is psychological safety. Could they question one another? Could they bring ideas to the table? Did they look at things with fear of consequence, or did they actually bring things to the table as an educational opportunity? Did they operate with curiosity? And what they found is building a perfect team, obviously still an anomaly, and every company strives to do that. But the key ingredient that everybody's really striving for now is psychological safety. And that is the gasoline for the most highly productive and innovative teams and businesses that are in the industry right now. So psychological safety, if you think about it this way, and I'm going to date myself a little bit because I have grown daughters. When my kids were little, they would say, why? Mommy, why is the sky blue? Why is the ground hard? Why are your eyes blue? And it's really cute until a certain point. And then there's like, okay, stop asking questions. We're done. And then we somewhere in our engagement, we shift into a because I said so. And we
Mm,
just shut down and we kind of squish that natural curiosity. And then we go into the world, and there are a lot of things in our society in North America where it is be quiet and listen, be seen and not heard, engage. And what we call that in psychology is impression management. So
mm,
we have been raised in a society where impression management has been super ingrained in us from a very young age. And then we go into the workforce and we find ourselves a place that might be incredibly healthy. And they say, well, why aren't you contributing? Why don't you want to be a part of the group? Why aren't you asking questions? So then you're like, I can't win. I can't win because I really need you to see me as competent and confident and the perfect contributor. To manage that impression, I will be quiet. I will withdraw because in my last job or the way I was raised or how I was taught in my school system, that's what I'm supposed to do. Well, what we're finding in the workplace is throw all that out the window. Throw it all out the window because the best way to engage and be productive and highly innovative teams is to work with a group of people, or I'll take it one further. It's not even just at your job, in your relationships, create a space where you are surrounded by people that you are safe to be yourself, be sincere, be genuine, be broken, be fearful, be confused, and know that you are accepted, supported, and that it all contributes to the greater good and everyone is still facing the same direction.
absolutely. Right. We can't, this has been a topic this week where we can't expect to be one person at work and a different person at home. That's especially now when half of us are in the same location for that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, it was okay when you could take that hat off in the car, drive 30 minutes home, sing Adele, work it out, and then go put your home hat on. Like,
Right.
it's totally fine. That's not the world we live in anymore. And honestly, I'm not sure that that practice was very healthy.
No, I don't think so either, because it's compartmentalizing different things.
Mhm.
It's repressing one part of ourselves and then letting other parts come out, which maybe, you're repressing some of the good things at work and some of the negative things are coming out at home and vice versa. So
Yeah.
there's both sides to it, right?
But I will throw out there without that drive home to switch gears, we are seeing in the workplace less filters,
Mm,
little less professional boundaries.
hmm.
So it is a very interesting double-edged sword, truly.
Yeah, it's an ongoing experience and exploration and conversation about this work-life balance,
Mhm.
the boundaries. We just had a chat and learn an hour ago that's all about boundaries, and I highly recommend y'all can rewatch the link that's going to go out in a couple days about that. But it's still murky right now, isn't it?
Mhm.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
hopefully we can find a little more clarity in the next 45 minutes. So feel free, folks, to keep those comments and questions coming in the chat. I love that it's already getting fired up here, and we're going to be going down that. I'm going to jump to a pre-submitted question first so I can really absorb your chat questions there, folks. So a question we had submitted earlier was, great question, who's responsible for creating a safe work environment? I'm feeling it's not just one person.
No. Um, no, I don't mean to sound blasé and just throw out the word everyone, but the truth
Right,
is everyone.
right.
Um, every individual contributor that is in our company, that is in my world by choice, in my friend circle or my family circle, though they all need to own and be held accountable to providing and creating and protecting psychological safety. So I'll do two examples. So if I have a friend in my personal life who is near and dear to me, I trust that I can be myself. I can be on every level, right? My good days, my bad days, my other. Um, and that person, that individual contributor to this relationship, to this friendship, um, does not guard that, or they
Mm.
violate that, they are no longer providing me psychological safety, which completely changes the dynamic of our relationship and really the formula of our future. Same at the workplace. You're engaged with teams, you're engaged with individual contributors, your peers, people in other departments, your mid-level management, your senior management, then you go on up to executive management, leadership in general. It's like saying leadership. Everyone is a leader, whether it's formal or informal. Everyone can lead. A janitor can lead. They can set the example, it's actions and words. So in order to truly be committed to psychological safety, we need to have ownership and accountability at every level in every company.
I love that. And the previous talk too, we were just talking about, the previous speaker said, imagine you're the CEO of you, like everyone is a leader, right? And we can take control or take ownership of ourselves and our lives, and that respect that you hopefully have for the person that's leading, right? Yeah. So we're getting some very interesting questions coming in the chat. And here, maybe we'll both do this. Well, buckle up, folks. Joy Z asks, can one of the speakers share authentically about a time they didn't feel safe and how they grew from that experience?
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, I can come up with a lot of them actually.
Yeah.
And so this particular example was at I'll use the very beginning of the pandemic when we started to really see the shift to work from home. And I was a contractor. So I was working for a wonderful company. Actually, it's ranked one of the top places to work in the United States. And my boss was amazing. She was kind of new to her job, so she was feeling it out herself. My team was amazing. And I had received 2 promotions to get on this specific change management team. And I was happy. I was nervous because I was still learning their culture and learning their ways in this department, but I could come to the table and have open discussions and ask for information without any sort of repercussions. But that changed when the pandemic started to really lock places down. And it wasn't the pandemic that caused my psychological unsafety. It was actually my boss. The person I had been trusting her. She was very open and very candid and a super supportive person. But she started to really make some mistakes in her communication with her team. She forgot that a lot of us were contractors and she was not. And the way she started to engage with us and talk about potential layoffs and potential downsizing and say things like, well, if we do have to let people go, the contractors will have to go first. Now, I understand she was trying to provide transparency, and I will always respect her for that. But what that did is it made me feel very unsafe for my family. So a pandemic is happening. I, as a human, already feel concerned for my health and well-being. The next step, that next layer, is my livelihood. The livelihood of myself and any children, my grown children that I may need to financially support as well while we're going through this time, because I don't know if they're going to be let go or not. So the word I like to use when I feel like my psychological safety is being violated is I'm unsettled. I'm just unsettled. There's like this feeling in my chest and it's not okay, but I don't have another word for that feeling. So I'm unsettled. And we started to engage in more conversations at my workplace, and they started to talk about approving the budget for the next go around. And there was a delay after delay after delay to get our budget approved. And at that point in time, I just needed to make a choice. Was I going to stay in an unsettled space for hope, or was I going to go find psychological safety for myself and my family? And I chose to leave. And I left a great group of people, and we're still friends to this day. And they've extended a couple of job offers to me that I've had to decline. But I was very honest when I left as to why. And my boss did apologize to me. She said, that was never my intention. And sometimes with psychological safety, your actions and your words, if they don't align, that's when people around you start to be unsettled. And that's where we need to be hyper aware to the people that we're near and how they'll respond to our words and our actions alignment.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that.
What about you?
Oh, well, I
Oh
was
yeah.
about, sure. Yeah, you're like, you don't get to go on the next question. I
No.
was thinking about when I was younger, one of my first jobs, like when I was in college or something, I was working at like a fitness place, you know, and it was like a summer job or whatever, but I'll never forget this experience because a friend of mine was like, I work at this place. I can get you a job there, but I can tell you it's intense. I was like, well, I just need work, So I was kind of desperate for work. I took the job, and the role, you had to do everything except teach the class. You had to like answer the phones, check everybody in, clean the studio in between. Just like multitasking out the wazoo, and it's just too much for one person to do. It just was unreasonable, right? There was unreasonable expectations for the job. The thing that put it over, it wasn't none of that. I at that point in my life, like, stretch me thin, no problem. But the thing that put me over was the boss lived nearby, would not be in there and present, but would watch everything I was doing on the security camera. And if I missed something, would call me when I'm trying to answer 100 other calls to be like, why aren't you answering the phone?
Yeah.
And I was like, well, I had to go to the bathroom. And their response was, you should take the phone into the bathroom with you.
Please don't do that.
No,
I'm glad you did not do that.
One that's horrendous. So this
Yeah.
is an extreme example of like, did not feel psychologically safe because I didn't feel trusted. I didn't feel like I could do the job in the way I saw fit. There was just so many things wrong with it. So I quit within a week, but it was, it's just like a toxic environment.
Yeah.
And it was very clear. It was one of those early times that I was like, oh, well, I can never work for anything like that ever again. It was a very healthy experience on the other side of it because I got out early.
Yeah.
I had the luxury of doing that because I was young and could just kind of bounce around and had a net. But so I had the luxury of being able to leave. And in hindsight, I was like, why? I never worked for a toxic environment out of desperation ever again. And that does come with privilege, but it also comes with discernment.
Yeah, those lessons learned, I mean, they're invaluable when you take them into the workplace and you're like, okay, never again this list.
Yep.
But I know I want to look for this list.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe work time and bathroom time are separate.
Yeah. Maybe I won't work underneath a camera. Yeah. Oh yeah, that sounds so unhealthy on like several levels.
Yeah, we don't have to unpack it. That's what my therapist
Nope.
is for.
That's a whole nother time together.
Yeah, totally. So another great question that came in from the chat here. Lauren asks, where do perceptions and experiences play into psychological safety? What a juicy distinction between these two things.
Oh, that is an amazing question because I'm going to layer on a couple of more complexities because we have our personality, we have how we were raised, and then we have to layer on culture, where we live and our social norms. So, perspective is so personal. It is just so personal. Now you can go into like a group, you can go into an area. So for instance, my dad's family is from the South. So if you go into the South and they say, what vegetable do you want with dinner? And collard greens is a norm. Okay, you can expect that because you're in the South, but you're not going to get that if you go up to the North. Then they're going to give you cheese curds. And you say, oh, that's healthy. Oh, that's not healthy. Depends on where you're from, depends on your norm. It also depends on your religious upbringing and it depends on your personal belief system. So perspectives, and I want to make sure I answer this question thoroughly. The question, as I remember it, is where do perspectives and experiences weigh in on psychological safety? Honestly, I feel like every human has to always question their own perspectives. Your self-awareness is key. it is absolutely key. So that's always going to address your perspectives, which also lead to personal biases in some cases. So if you can be aware of your personal biases and what those look like, your perspectives, if they come from experience or come from how you were raised, things of that nature, then you know the lens you look through. So when you enter into a workplace, having that awareness, that heightened awareness, knowing that other people bring their own lenses to the table, we're able to then remove a lot of natural responses to be defensive. Instead, we're curious. So I just told you my dad's family is from the South. So if I come to the table and I say something, maybe I say a saying that you're not familiar with, you're not immediately going to assume it means something else. If you have psychological safety with me, you're naturally curious as to what did you mean by that? Instead of feeling like I'm on the attack. So I'm from the South. So sometimes I will say things like, well, bless their heart.
I know what that means.
Well, it depends, right? It really
does.
depends.
The context depends, but that can mean a lot of different things.
Because if I'm in the South and I say, "Whoo, what a day, bless their heart," that is my Southern friends will say, because they think I'm being very sarcastic and condescending. If I'm in the North, it's actually taken more on its word. It's
right.
Oh, well, that's very kind of you. The perspective is so important, but being aware of your personal perspectives and the fact that everyone else comes to the table, especially in a work environment or even in a friendship or, a family of choice, with their own, that's how you can learn from one another instead of automatically going on the defense or attacking one another. And that's what fosters our psychological safety, is creating that natural curiosity and that bond together.
Yeah. I love this. Oh yeah, I have several friends from the South, so I got hip to bless your heart, bless their heart.
Oh, and sometimes it just slips out, and then it depends on my audience, and all of a sudden I'm like, you know what? One day I'm just going to stop saying that, but I don't mean it in a bad way.
Right.
But the receiver. There's a great saying. I don't know if you've heard it. It's your perception of me is a reflection of you. My response to you is a reflection of me.
I hadn't heard that. That's beautiful.
Oh, I love that. So when I see people, they start to get emotionally reactive.
Yeah.
It is not because of me. There is something inside of them has ignited that level of response. So that's my key to go. I shift my brain into neutral because I need to fully listen to what this person is saying and try to love them enough as a human to work through this with them. And that's my response, is a reflection of loving them enough or caring about them as enough to go into neutral to help walk them through. So I love that quote. It's actually by my computer at home.
Can you, and actually we just got a request from the crowd here. Annie said, can you repeat the quote? Because it's so solid.
Oh, sure. And I'm going to paraphrase. I'm sure I'm not going to get absolutely perfect, but it's, your perception of me is a reflection of you. My reaction to you is a reflection of me.
It's so good. It's so true.
It's so true.
Yeah. I was just thinking of the phrase earlier too, that feels related, is if it's hysterical, it's historical. Oh, so if you're having this intense reaction or you're witnessing it, someone's intense reaction, that's potentially an old wound that's being activated, or some old feelings that are being activated, And I love your response, you said, is to shift into neutral and to fully listen, because that's then shifting our, whatever we did or whatever we said, okay, that has happened, but now it's our responsibility to be of service to this person.
Right. And if I did something wrong, like, I will always own it, but emotional reactivity.
Not everyone does.
Right. I wish they did. Yeah. Emotional reactivity, when you engage the hemispheres of your brain and you are heightened, you are having an emotional response to something, it is not possible to engage the logic side of your brain.
Right.
You have to shift.
Yeah.
So if you reacting to me and you are mad at me, we're at work together and you are mad at me, I made you look bad, I failed you, I've done something terrible, and you are coming at me, that is, you are operating and coming to me based on your sense of how you are perceived, your value is perceived, your professional reputation has been damaged. These are the things you're bringing to me. And so I need to fully listen instead of immediately engaging with you emotionally. Then neither one of us is going to be logical. I mean, logical is just out the window if we're both emotional.
Yeah, it's that instinctual reaction of the fight or flight, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, it served its purpose when we were trying to survive in the wilderness, and now it's still this, you know, it's in our DNA, but it's about us pausing and not engaging, especially if someone else is activated, to not match it, right?
Right.
Shift
And that's
that.
about creating that psychological safety space for someone. You can be mad at me. You can, and in fact, you can use those words and share that with me. Now, I will ask professionally, we have certain boundaries. You know, we don't engage in front of a large group of people. We're not cursing. You know, there's no sort of public event that's happening. But if I did something or you feel that I failed you in some way, I want you to trust me enough to come to me and say, this is not okay. I am upset about this. This hurt me. And this is why. Like I would need that from you. So I have the opportunity to make it right. And then we can resume and foster that psychologically safe environment.
Yes. Yeah. And it's so important to be, I love the way you're phrasing this, to be able to validate someone's reaction, right? About something maybe I did. Oh, I said something, it was potentially unconscious bias at play or whatever was going on, maybe just complete unawareness, you know, and activated something. And you have a right and to validate those feelings for someone and to hold it for them. And I also love at the same time, practicing boundaries in a work safe environment, because if someone, you know, if you want to address that in front of the whole company in a board meeting, that might not promote psychological safety for the two people involved and everyone around them.
No. And at that point, again, your perception of me is a reflection of you, and my response to you is a reflection of me. And if you wanted to come at me in a boardroom, there's a whole lot that we need to unpack with that later on you.
Right.
And how I'm going to engage in front of others, and especially like superiors, is going to speak a lot to how I'm able to lead.
Yes. And thank you, Annie, for dropping that quote in the chat for us. I appreciate that. We have great questions coming in from the chat, so I'm going to keep coming on to these live ones here. And forgive me if I'm mispronouncing your name. Siandra asks, do you have any questions you asked during an interview to assess psychological safety in a new work environment?
Oh, I do. Yep. So when I go into an interview, one of my favorite questions is to simply say, you know, what are the core values of your company? Now, core values and mission statement are different. If they can't figure out the difference, red flag. If they pause and they're like, well, I'm not sure, red flag. Because core values to a company, for them to believe them and live them, should be ingrained in any and every leader, especially that is interviewing. So for instance, if you asked me today, Diana, what are the core values for SoftwareONE? Well, I can tell you, and you know why I can tell you? Because every single oh my goodness, every single time we have a presentation, we start with our core values and we select which one of those we're actually speaking to.
Ooh.
So core values is the belief system of the culture, how you are pledging internally and externally to operate. And we have humble, customer service, employee satisfaction, discipline, passion, speed, all right there. When you're in an interview and you ask about the values, that's going to be your tell.
Oh, I love that. And great question. Thank you so much for asking that. So before we we're talking about new jobs here and assessing out opportunities. Before we jumped on the call, you gave me a little nugget about yourself that said you took this current position, this job as an experiment, and you have since, within what, just a year, you've been promoted a few times, 3 times, was it?
Yep.
So
Yeah.
so let's talk about that a little bit, as you were assessed out a new place. And I'd love to hear what the experiment was that you were setting up for yourself.
I was on a quest for psychological safety, but I didn't quite know the term, but I knew that I was feeling a consistent, like unsettled. And I've been a consultant for a long time. I've worked in politics, I've worked in higher education, and very different backgrounds. And I've always known when it's time to go, it's time to go. And as a consultant, you know that they either renew your contract or they come back and they say, okay, thank you, your scope of work has been completed, and then you move on with your life. So there's always been a practice in my life where it's okay to leave. And I'm grateful for that. I am grateful for that. That's helped me a lot with my communication skills. But
no one to leave the party, huh?
No one to leave the party, make friends, don't burn bridges. You never know. The world is very small. Yep. So I was working 2 full-time jobs during the pandemic because I had nothing but time. And they were very, very good jobs. So there was no longer a consultant. It was a full-time employee, 2 different places, 2 very different industries. And on paper, they were excellent jobs. I mean, 10 years ago, I probably would have just absolutely lost my mind to have one of those jobs. But in both of these jobs, neither one of them challenged me. Neither one of them made me feel safe. I always felt like I was replaceable. During the pandemic, there was always that sense of unsettled, and you don't know what's around the corner anyway. So you're always hedging your bets. And the personalities and the teams I was working with, I would find 1 or 2 coworkers that I felt very safe with, but then they would leave. They would go pursue something else. And so one of my jobs was with a contractor with the government. And my project went to ask the government for more money, and they started congressional hearings. And I was like, oh, peace out. Nope, I'm good. I don't want to be on the receiving end of that. So it was time for me to find a place where I could really call home or go back to consulting. I had just decided 2 great jobs. Neither one of them were healthy enough for me. So I needed to make a decision. So a friend of mine who was with me at the government, she got hired on at SoftwareONE, and she called me and she said, you're never going to believe this company. And we came out of the government. It was a lot of bureaucracy. It was very dry. So anything I thought was like, she's a little skewed there. Anything out of the government's going to be amazing. And she's like, nope. She just kept going on and on and on. And she finally said, they have an opening. And I was like, I'm unsettled, but I don't know. I've never heard of this company. I'm not really sure. I set up an interview. I applied, I got an interview with the hiring manager, and I have never had so much fun in my life. In an interview, he said, you seem great. Thanks for submitting. I had to do a video interview. We're about 5 minutes into this. And he said, but let's play a game. You get to interview me, but I'm interviewing for your position. Go. And I was like, this guy is nuts. But he's like apparently my kind of nuts. And it was so much fun. Guy as well. But he was testing my knowledge of the role. He was testing my knowledge of how to research the position. What were the qualifications I would look for? And guys, I'll give you another little tip that I love so much, and I've used it so many times. When you are interviewing, make sure you interview your interviewer really well. And make sure you ask all of the questions. So like he gave me the opportunity to ask questions I needed him to ask me. What that taught him was exactly how I needed to be treated. He knew. So for instance, and I'll come back to the story in a minute. If I said, what are 3 things I need to know about you, Hunter? If I worked with you, what are 3 things I need to know and respect about you?
Let's see, 3 things to work and to respect about me. I I need at least a hybrid environment or want to work from home.
Okay.
Right. So that's
Right.
one that I want, right? Because I love this lifestyle. Love being able to go play with my little dog in between calls. And there's a certain amount that for me, I would want to be expected to work and not over.
Okay.
Yeah. And for a certain amount, that's, the negotiation part of whatever that is for the job.
Right.
And let's see, what's the third thing? I feel it's like two truths and a lie now.
No, don't lie to me. Please don't lie to me. We're starting to psychological safety. Don't ruin it.
Yeah. And a third thing to work with me. Let's see. I think it would be, I want to be trusted to do my job without being micromanaged.
Fantastic. So if we're in an interview situation, fast forward to my example, we're in an interview situation, how can you position your questions to find those answers out for yourself without looking like you're disinterested in the job?
Right.
That's the position he put me in. What he did was, by the questions I asked him, they were my tell. He knew exactly what I needed and what I needed to know. And afterwards, he told me that. And he said, I love that you were real quick on your feet. I know exactly what you're looking for. They're this, and this. And then he said, is there anything you said you wish you hadn't said?
Ooh, what a great
and I was like, you are my favorite interviewer by far, like all of these great questions. And I thought, this man, this is so unconventional, but he has taught me so much, even about myself in just these few minutes, like this 30-minute interview. I want to know more. I want to work for him. And so they came in and they gave me a job offer, and it was way below what I wanted. And I still said yes. I said, well, why not? Because if it doesn't work out, this guy's piqued my interest. This company has piqued my interest. The more I knew about it, the more questions I asked, the more I liked the responses. Let's go see. Worst case, it doesn't work. Guess what happens? I go find something else. And that's part of being psychologically safe for yourself, is knowing that you can. So there was this moment where I'm like, you know what? I can. If this doesn't work, I can leave. And so I jumped into it, and they hired me to do change management for Microsoft. My specialty was to move people from Google to Microsoft, and I walked them through that process. And within 6 months, they moved me to the regional leadership team. And within 6 months, I became the chief of staff. Because it's about learning and human behavior and building spaces and empowering leaders and empowering people and opening doors and creating a space where there's a synergy. And it's not just psychological safety, it's bringing your A game, like feeling so safe to be authentic that I can go from a jog to a sprint. And I'm not a runner. I'm just not. And that's okay. So if I tried to take my chubby rear end to a sprint, they wouldn't judge me. But I can bring my A game. I can do all the things. And every single thing I do, even when I fail, and I have failed, they are so happy that I am there and I'm validating them, and I'm trying because they know why I tried it. And we just go from there. We innovate.
I love that. And thank you for sharing that journey. It's so, I was on the ride with you.
Okay, good.
Yeah, fantastic. So I think you just touched on this. Emily shared in the chat here some process with, in their management, they feel there's, an expectation of perfectionism out of people, and it's created a very silent work environment because nobody, they feel like they're going to be, working out of fear now and being judged for being wrong or viewed as stupid, they said here. So to change such corporate culture or team culture, what type of initiative do you suggest one to take? Should I just run away like the others did and go to a better workplace? So you mentioned like you knew when it was time to go.
Yeah.
And that is a personal decision, I think, assessing that level of psychological safety. So there's that way. There's also, if you choose to stay, what are some of the things one could do?
That's a great question. And it's an unfortunate situation, but it's a very unfortunately common situation. So the first thing that comes to my mind when I think about this is, we have to understand and accept that there are different industries that require a different level of precision. So if our friend who submitted this question, let's say, is in the medical industry, there is a definite higher level of exactness, maybe, to what she does than maybe someone who writes articles for a newspaper, or it runs a daycare center. So I would think that if she or he, I'm sorry, I don't know but if this person is in an industry where there's high analytical skills involved, that can be very taxing in teams where they're more left brain than right brain engagement. So the communication skills, the communication process is very different. Now, turnover is not always bad. When we do a reorg, there's always turnover. And I like to remind people that when people leave and new people come, that's called an opportunity. That is new eyes, new experience, new blood. As an individual contributor to create psychological safety, what I would suggest is start by leading by example. If it's perfection and it's analytical, if it's medical, something like that, then there is a higher level of, I want to say, anxiety and less emotion that's going to go into that. I would wonder, actually, what his relationship is with their boss. Has the boss turned over as well? I mean, there's so many things I want to know about this situation.
I can tell you one thing Emily told us is that they work in finance accounting field.
Okay. All right. So high analytical skills. So it's going to be a lot of quiet. You also, left brain people are typically more introverted and less emotional anyway. So we're dealing with a group of people that are going to use a part of their brain that's going to require a lot of logic and not a lot of engagement, social engagement. So if Emily is socially inclined, let's say she works and there's so many questions. I just have so many questions. I just feel like we need to call Emily, and dig into this. Like, so many parts to this.
Just LOL, please call me. I need help. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well,
Emily, send me an email later. We'll walk
exactly.
through this entire situation together because there's so many ingredients. I wish it was a one size fits all answer I could give. I would say lead by example, actions speak louder than words. Engage. If you have a trusted relationship with your leader, engage with them in a space to ask how you can help. Because the bottom line is turnover is disruptive to the productivity of any business. So is there a way to appeal in whatever relationship this is with your boss and say, listen, there's turnover. How can I help you? Validate the fact that, our productivity is being impacted by this. How can I assist with this process? And build that relationship, build that trust with your boss. If your boss feels like their job is in jeopardy, they're may be less likely to be trusting. They may feel like they're on their way out, so they're already in defensive mode, which makes it harder to engage. Emily, we just need to talk.
Yeah.
We just need to talk. So many things.
Yeah. Well, thank you. It's opening up so many different possibilities, and I'm sure a lot of people are identifying with different bits of this here. So, and we'll do this in the last couple minutes as well. So, we'll, let us know how folks can reach out to you and how they can check in. And so you and Emily can continue the conversation as well.
Okay.
Okay, friends. So we have just under 10 minutes left. So I'd love to get a few more questions in. If you have any that are coming to mind, feel free to drop them in the chat. And there's a question here that was pre-submitted that I love, that I think is so powerful. Someone asked, what would you advise if we don't feel comfortable being authentic at work? How can you cultivate psychological safety to be yourself, even if you don't relate to anyone on your team?
Run that by me one more time. There was a lot of layers to that. I want to make sure I
Sure.
get it.
So how would you advise if someone doesn't feel they can be their authentic self at work, they don't feel comfortable at work?
Yeah.
And what are things that we can do for ourselves to cultivate psychological safety or in this environment if we don't feel like we have a support network or anyone we can relate to on our team?
So there I'm going to lean back into we as humans need to feel psychologically safe in some capacity. So I would say if you don't feel psychologically safe at work, you can't surround yourself with people where you do. So I have what I call the circle of trust. I have like 5 people in my life that if I text 911, they will not even ask questions. They'll drop what they're doing, come running. That is my circle of trust. So I have a space where if my job goes away, the people who I love and can identify with me will always be there to provide me emotional support until I find another job. Your job doesn't define you. I'm fortunate enough to be in a job where I love what I do, and it's not a job, clock in, clock out dread. But I understand that that's not the case for everyone. Sometimes it's a necessary evil. You do what you need to do because you need to eat and you need to make money, and that makes sense. But that doesn't mean that you can't be psychologically safe in your life. So create a space for yourself with your friends or your family where you have psychological safety. So should something happen at work, it doesn't define you. You are surrounded by people who care at your best, at your worst, at your other. And then you move forward and you find a different employment. It's okay not to feel safe at work. Sometimes that has to be what it is. And there are times where I was a single mom for a long time and I didn't feel psychologically safe, but I had to do what I needed to do. I had to keep my job. I had to make sure I kept my bosses happy in order to be able to put food on the table. So there was a part of me that just had to take a minute and say, okay, I may not love this space. I may not love this experience, but it's a means to an end. And I'm committed to that. And I love my family and I know I love my friends. And if this job goes away, I'm going to be really scared, but my friends are going to pick me up. They're going to give me lots of hugs and they're going to help me send out resumes. And that's okay.
Yeah. I call it my Fab Five. Like, it's the same idea. That circle of trust. It's so important to have. And it's great when we have people we connect with at work. That makes it more fun and can be more playful. And that's wonderful. But there are those times when sometimes, it makes me think of, there's this mindfulness teacher I really like named Sharon Salzberg. And, she says some things just hurt, and sometimes that's just what it is, and that's what's happening. And then we can do it for as long as we need to or have to. And then hopefully we can make changes to, like you said, it's okay to leave the party. Maybe you have to leave the party a little late because you had to take care of a friend who wasn't feeling so good, but, and that friend was your wallet, but, it's like, then it's time to go. Yeah.
Well, I look at everything in my life as a chapter. So I've got some really short, crappy chapters. I got some long, crappy chapters. I've got some short, great chapters. I've got some long, great chapters.
Yeah.
And that's how I look at it, because if I look at it, it has a shelf life. It has an expiration, because that helps me adopt and adapt to the next change that's going to happen to me, whether I like it or not. And that's okay, because that's life. But every chapter that is in my book, I have taken things away from it. And so if it's a job that you don't feel psychologically safe, but it's a means to an end, then this is your chapter. So the question is, what do you have? What is in the scope of your control to feel safe and to set you up for the next chapter? So is there professional development? Do you listen to TED Talks? Do you go in and do edX has a lot of free classes you can take? I just took one from Berkeley the other day called The Science of Happiness for free. And it was amazing. Taught me a lot of things I didn't know. And now I go into these great conversations and I'm able to broaden the horizons of people. But what are you doing for you that is within the scope of your control, so that the next chapter, when you are in a position where you can put more of a priority on creating a psychological safety environment at work. Like, what are you doing about that now? There's got to be ownership at all levels and all chapters of your life. And it's all growth.
Oh, I love that. So friends, we're in the last 5 minutes here. And so we asked Diana some questions beforehand, and I'm going to pull that up. So I love that the slides is getting real with Diana. And I always say, well, we're going to get extra real because I feel like the conversation was real. So I love when we were chatting beforehand, the question, how would you describe the culture in the world? In a word, right?
Oh, no, not in the world.
No. And you were like,
No.
in the world? Are you talking about at where I work? I have different answers for that. So special for
Yeah.
the work. Yes.
Yeah, it's another one of those perception things too. Because when you say special, it's like, no,
Yes.
it's, the culture at SoftwareONE. My backup word to special would be magic. And I do not say that word hardly ever, but it is so unique and so heavily guarded and protected that special was my first choice.
I love that. Yeah. So, and like you were saying, what you love about SoftwareONE is your culture there. And how would you describe some of the core beliefs? And I love when you're speaking to those different core values. It's so, I love that. I love that. It's like, it has such a, and I mean this in the best way, like transparent accountability to your intentions of what you're about to say. And I just love that. I think that's so cool. Are there other things in the culture that you'd like to talk about in a minute or two?
You know, the other thing I love about the culture is we all want to help one another, and no leader is unapproachable. So when I first started, they hired me on and they said, okay, you know, we don't quite have a client for you right now. We have one in the works, whatever. It's going to be a few months, but we do have an internal reorg that's happening. And, you know, you have a background in organizational behavior. Would you be willing to help? And I said, absolutely. And I said, so what is it? And they're like, we don't know. And I was like, they were like, we were kind of hoping you go find out and tell us. And excuse me, it's like knocking on doors virtually. So I'm like in Teams trying to find people during a pandemic, like, hey, hi, I'm new. Do you have a minute? And I thought, there's no way.
Yeah.
No one is going to respond. That's how I met and started to work with our leadership. And it was amazing. And it's still amazing, but we genuinely are a group of people who want to help one another.
Oh, I love that. And we asked, what are some of your top tips for someone who is interviewing? I love that we got to hear some of your experience, interview the interviewer. We definitely heard the details behind that tip, and you learned so much. I learned so much from that. Thank you. Speak to the posted job description and ask questions. Yep. These are all very strong pieces of advice. And I feel like we touched on all of this. This is great.
Thanks. You know, the one thing I would say when you ask questions, people respond best when you're looking for their guidance. So in an interview, or if you're just trying to a conversation starter, whatever topic they're talking about, turn it back to them and say, well, what about you? Or how would you have handled that? And that's going to give you what I call that is thin slicing. So you're able to just peel back those thin layers and get to know that person that's in the room with you more than just at the surface level. And then you can connect with them and be like, oh, really? You did that? Me too. And then all of a sudden you have a friendship.
I love that, thin slicing. That's a new one, and I'm keeping it.
Oh, have you read Malcolm Gladwell, his book, Blink?
I haven't read Blink. I love Malcolm.
That's where thin slicing comes from.
Okay.
Yep. Great book.
Thank you for that. So we're at time. How can folks stay connected with you? How can Emily reach out to you so you can talk more? What's the best way?
I would tell you the best way is to find me on LinkedIn.
Great.
And I am the only, to my knowledge, Diana Cabra-Meyer on LinkedIn. So Hunter, is there a way to show my name one more time, or can we
Oh,
put it
yes,
in the chat?
absolutely. I will pull up your slide here. There we are.
Send me a connection request, send me a message. And then it also helps me because if anyone is out there and they're looking for a position, I have a lot of friends in a lot of different industries. If they, want guidance and some professional growth, I can connect them with some great groups. A lot of different opportunities out there.
Awesome. Diana, thank you so much for making the time today. Folks, thank you for tuning in. Please do check out SoftwareONE on the Power to Fly website, where you can see more resources and other job listings that come up. And again, let's hear a round of applause for Diana. Thank you so much. I have had such a great time with you. I hope we get to do this again.
I would love that. Thank you.
All right. Have a great rest of your day. Stay warm now, okay?
I'll do my best. You too.
All right.
Talk
Bye,
soon,
everybody.
everybody.